Hey guys, this is Holland with the Wolverine.com, and I was back on the road this week. Actually made my way to both Nashville and Dallas, but before we talk about my time there, want to make sure you're subscribed to the Wolverine.com. If you're not, you can get all your latest recruiting intel there for just $10 until the start of next football season. So $10 until August of 2023. You also get our great message board community over at the Fort and all your latest team information as well. That's $10 until the start of next football season. As always, like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel. That is completely free. All right, like I said, I was in Nashville and Dallas this weekend. Had a chance to see two Michigan commits. Let's go ahead and start off with Mason Curtis, an on 300 2024 linebacker out of Nashville, Ensworth. Curtis was a little bit of a surprise commitment to Michigan this summer. He visited and then just basically pulled the trigger a couple weeks later. And he wasn't a guy we had talked a lot about, so it was a bit of a surprise. He's definitely an intriguing prospect. This was my first time watching him live, and he is listed as a linebacker. Michigan originally recruited him as a traditional linebacker, but he's 6'4", 190 pounds, which isn't exactly what you would look for in a traditional linebacker. But I think Curtis is a guy that you don't really pigeonhole. He's a 2024, so he still has time to add weight to his frame, and obviously he's going to need to add weight. That's priority number one once he arrives at Michigan. But he's a prospect that just plays all over the field. When I saw him on Thursday night, he played a regular outside linebacker role. He came off the edge. He played safety. He even saw a few snaps at corner. I mean, this is a guy that really just moved around everywhere. I talked to him after the game, and I was like, hey, man, where does Michigan kind of see you at, or where do you prefer to play? And he just said everywhere. And, he's picked up his conversations with Mike Elston because he does have great length. And if he adds the weight, then I think he can potentially be an edge guy. He's picked up conversations with Dylan Romney, who is the analyst that works with outside linebackers. So moving to edge could be a potential play. I'm not sure that he does stick as a traditional linebacker. I think he could be a linebacker safety type of hybrid if he doesn't add that much weight. I actually was talking to our national director of rankings, Charles Power, on the sidelines, and he kind of compared Curtis's frame to Kyle Hamilton, and he kind of is right in that sense, a kind of a bigger safety that can spin down and be a linebacker or just be a box safety in general. He kind of reminded me playing style. Now, obviously, again, he needs to add weight, but playing style of Taylor Mays, who was an All-American at USC. But Taylor was a big dude. I think Mason, again, needs to get into the strength and conditioning program at Michigan and kind of see where his body goes. Ben Herbert obviously does a great job of adding weight in the right places. So right now, I think Curtis is just really interesting. I mean, he's an extremely talented football player. He had 8 tackles and an interception against a really good team, Brentwood Academy, which features multiple Division I players. But yeah, I think right now, I wouldn't call Curtis a project because, again, he's a really good football player. I just think he's a man without a position that needs to fill out, and then we'll see where, his best spot is. I think Michigan was smart to just go ahead and take his commitment early. And a lot of times when you have early commits like these that kind of come out of the blue and that are out of the region, they have a tendency to waver later in the cycle. But Curtis seems all in on Michigan. He comes from the same training program that produced Michigan linebacker Junior Colson. So that's definitely a plus. And he's been to campus twice this fall. He just visited for the game against Penn State. He was also on campus in September. He's been actively recruiting others to Michigan, including on 300 2024 edge Brian Robinson. They spent a lot of time together during Curtis's time in Ann Arbor. So, it seems like he's pretty locked in early on. There were a few other underclassmen that Michigan has offered in that game. So Ensworth took on Brentwood Academy. in one of the premier games in the state of Tennessee last week. The first one, we're just going to briefly hit on all these guys, but the first one I want to talk about is Ethan Utley. He's a 2025 defensive lineman out of Ensworth, so a teammate of Mason Curtis. He visited for the game against Penn State as well. He has a ton of SEC offers early on, but he has high interest in the Wolverines. Mason Curtis is already recruiting him hard, and Ethan told me they would love to play with each other at the next level. Right now, he's about 6'4", 260 pounds. He's going to play closer to 300 once he gets to college. Again, he's a 2025, but he looks like the typical 3 technique that Michigan goes after. So Ethan Utley, definitely a name to know. Another name to know is George McIntyre, top 100 2025 quarterback. Now, we've talked a lot about guys like Bryce Underwood and Ryan Montgomery, but McIntyre is a prospect that Michigan offered in the summer. Jim Harbaugh actually made his way down to South Florida for a satellite camp, saw McIntyre throw, and personally extended an offer. McIntyre hasn't really delved too much into his recruitment, but I would expect Michigan to get a visit. He's a taller pocket passer. He's about 6'5", 190 pounds. So he's a big frame kid that has the frame to add quite a bit of weight. He has a strong arm. He's definitely one to keep an eye on at the quarterback position. And then Colby Harmon, also out of Brentwood Academy, is a rising 2025 athlete, holds an early offer from Michigan. He's listed as a running back, but mostly played corner, kind of a little Swiss Army knife player at about 5'9.5", speedy athlete. He's, again, another guy to keep an eye on in 2025. After seeing that game in Nashville, I hopped on a plane the following morning and made my way to Dallas to see on 300 Michigan edge commit Enow Etta. So a lot of buzz about Enow today as we are recording this. He made a visit to TCU over the weekend, but I'm not really too concerned. I think he committed to Michigan for a reason. Enow's a very high academic kid. He loves what Michigan can offer off the field, on the field. He's an edge guy. Michigan produces a ton of edge players. They obviously had 2 taken high in the NFL draft last year. He's developed a really good connection with Mike Morris, who is having an outstanding season, and their games kind of resemble each other. So I'm not too afraid of TCU right now. I know it's the home state school, but another big factor in Michigan's favor is Enow's not really a Texas kid. He was actually born in Seattle. He lived in Florida and then lived in Africa before moving to the Lone Star State closer to when he enrolled in high school. He told me Texas isn't one of the favorite places he's lived in, and he'd like to get an experience in another region, and so he really felt comfortable in the Midwest. That's why his final 2 were Michigan and Michigan State. So I'm not too concerned with TCU. I mean, I'm not dismissing it either. Anytime you have a recruit that's committed that visits another school, you definitely have to monitor it, but Enow has been pretty solid since giving Michigan a verbal commitment in the summer, and it's obviously important for Michigan to keep him in the class. He is the highest rated commit per On3 this cycle, and I mean, his potential is through the roof. This is a kid that's only been playing football for about 3 years, and I mean, his best days are obviously ahead of him. He's every bit of 6'4.5", 260 pounds. This is a big edge, and like I mentioned, he kind of resembles Mike Morris a little bit in his playing style and his size, and he's absolutely dominant at the high school level. Now, he does play against weaker competition, arguably some of the weakest in a state that's known for football, but he does what he's supposed to do at that level. He absolutely dominates. On Friday night, he had arguably his worst statistical game of the year, and it was still a big game. Like, he had half a dozen tackles, a sack, a fumble recovery. He had a pass deflected that resulted in an interception. So, I mean, he just completely looks out of place in a good way at that level. I think with Enow, he's physically ready to play at the next level. He looks like a college football player. I don't think Ben Herbert will have to do too much with him. In fact, I think Ben Herbert will probably strip a little bit of weight from him and then build it back up with muscle. But he's very, very well built in both his upper and lower halves. The thing about Enow is he plays such weak competition that I think it's going to take some time for him to really adjust to the speed of the game at a place like Michigan and adjust to playing against players that are just as good as he is. And then on top of that, like I said, he's only been playing football for a limited amount of time, so he's more advanced technically than you would expect at this stage in his development, considering that he doesn't have an extended football resume. But there's still some things to work on, and Mike Elston is such a great teacher. I think he's going to add some more pass rushing moves to his arsenal. I think he's really going to help Enow against the run. He doesn't see a lot of plays come his way. Most teams really avoid him, so he doesn't have to play the run too much at the high school level. So I think he's going to, develop in that area as well. He's still a little raw, but the athleticism, the size, how well he moves. He has a basketball and a soccer background. He has great feet. Again, the sky is the limit with Enow Etta. There's a reason he's rated as the top prospect in the class, and he was very impressive on Friday night for sure. Really like what he brings to the table. I think Michigan got two really, really intriguing prospects on the defensive side of the ball in Enow and Mason Curtis. All right, guys, for the latest on Michigan recruiting, make sure to sign up to the Wolverine.com right now, just $10 until next football season. We'll see you next week as I head to the great state of Michigan.